morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're having a good start to your Tuesday. Happy August, which is kind of crazy to believe. My name is Jacqueline Overton. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Lean Techniques, and we're so excited that you're able to join us this morning for Lean Bites. If this is your first time at Lean Bites, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Lean Bites are short 16-minute talks where we work to give you practical tips, tools, and techniques that you can start applying within your organization today. So before we get started and I hand things over, just a couple quick housekeeping things. One, if you have any questions at all throughout today's talk, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll work to get through those at the end. Or if needed, we can do a follow-up too. And then two, please do us a huge favor. There'll be a short survey that pops up at the end once you close out of Zoom. And just let us know what you thought. It takes, I think, 30 seconds. Let us know what you thought, your questions that you still have, any topics you're interested in hearing about more. Your feedback is really important to us and shapes really everything that we do. So would love your thoughts there. With that, I am thrilled to introduce Senior Engineering Consultant Nate Sepich, who is going to be talking about taking AI from tool to teammate. So Nate, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about moving AI from tool to teammate in engineering teams. Yeah, like Jacqueline said, my name is Nate Sepich. I've been working in the space for 5 years now, and really excited on how AI can help most teams. So I'm going to start with just a quick agenda and background on how has AI kind of taken over different aspects of all kinds of our work. Talk about some hurdles to adoption you might see in different organizations, and then how feedback loops can basically help with some of those hurdles, as well as empowering AI systems to work with your data. So just to start with some background, just in general, the industry has been trending towards basically mass adoption of AI in ways that 5 years ago we could have never have really imagined. So like Google, being able to say that 75% of their code is written by AI, is a big like landmark thing in terms of like how different the world is in like the last year of how it used to be. And like other companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are innovating and showing how large language models and other AI tools and harnesses can be used to industrialize code production and just change the way software development teams work. Um, I think an interesting crossover and thing that I like to like draw back to from this is like basically thinking about how human agent teams themselves are not really a new thing. It's kind of a cross domain, and like maybe as software engineers we might not think about it, but military use cases, gaming, the gaming industry, firefighting, search and rescue, like these are all places where humans have been collaborating with agents for many years. And we're just now seeing how these techniques, can evolve and sort of change how software engineers do their jobs. So I guess in like the Madden example, right, of like you can play an NFL football game and you only really control one player at a time, but really you're controlling a whole team of people. And that is just like an illustration of how, we are orchestrating and we are using agents in ways that we probably never even thought we would, and software is evolving to do that as well. Some hurdles to adoption that I think are pretty relevant when we think about, moving AI into more teams and how business processes can use them are these big four areas of quality, value stream fit, tool usage, and then like measurement and ROI. So starting with quality, like do the developers in your teams trust the outputs of AI? And if you're not doing development, like are you using AI in your workflow? And do the people who use it trust it, or do they view it as slop? Value stream fit is like where in your value stream can AI start driving value for you and just speeding up your processes. On top of that, thinking about it even at a lower level of like tool usage itself, just because you're paying for a subscription, like are the tools injected into your business like actually augmenting current processes? Are you changing the way standard work is being done? And how does that really impact and drive adoption? And finally, measurement and ROI, how do we know that we're getting our money's worth? And I'm going to talk about how feedback loops and, different ways of using your data can help you drive these things forward. So kind of to start, I'm going to be kind of nerdy and lower level here and thinking about how you should be building tools to support the development of your products. So this is a really lower level like software engineering concept, but I'm going to roll it up into a higher level overview towards the end. And these two are two essential pieces to the way that I've been working recently, especially with like agentic coding. And I'm just going to start with talking through how we use them and why, and then we're going to have an overview at the end of how they fit into like a greater ecosystem of these tools. So CLIs or command line interfaces are almost essential to all agentic testing and tooling these days. And if you weren't a software developer or someone who used like your command prompt a long time ago, you might not even know what this is. But this kind of big ugly thing on the right is something where you would be able to type as a person and interact with your operating system through text. And the ways that LLMs can now do this at scale allows us for unique use cases where we can do testing or querying external services, doing quality validations for your code base or whatever you're working on, and then also like cross-platform integration. So if you're working with like AWS or Azure, these providers all provide command line interfaces to interact with their downstream services. And thinking about how to empower your agents with those is essential to speeding up your development lifecycle. And this second one, which is I think is slightly more unique, is related to ACPX or Agent Context Protocol. And ACPX is actually a command line interface to enable cross-agent communication. So it's kind of a layering of the tools, but basically this allows you to talk and enable agents to talk across platforms. So this is like my Claude talking to Copilot or Codex in the background before it responds to me, sort of thing. And this enables you to do sort of like real-time review. So like if you find yourself like stringing agents together of like on this thing, I want to call this other LLM and drive it, get it back into my context and get what it has to say. Like this is an opportunity to, instead of having to push that off to be a separate thing, you can integrate with your local harnesses and local agent context setup to have agents do that cross-talking. So this can be useful for like real-time review, like I said, retrieval from different data sources, alternate perspective, right? So if you're using one coding agent, you can call another one in real time and have them contemplate, just like how Claude would use sub agents now to build its own sort of like alternate perspective on things. You could have Claude call Codex, and that's like a whole separate model provider to get an even different perspective on the solution. And that also just enables different types of collaboration between agents. So thinking through this at a deeper level of just how your stakeholders, disseminate work to your teams and how your team, turns that work and feedback into a system, it kind of boils down into something like this. And I'm just trying to draw some simple comparisons and lines of, your team is going to produce these artifacts, such as like your product framing and like what you're working on, maybe the marketing angle. Maybe you have like a roadmap side of like what, how am I going to deliver on that angle? And then you actually have a deliverable thing, such as like a code base. And in the software world, we can try to break down the different layers of software, basically, and trying to think through how your developers and how your teams engage with the work that they're doing, and basically thinking of how the data flows between them and figuring out how an agent could then be involved in that data flow, make that data flow more seamless for agents. And that's kind of the goal of speeding up your feedback loop and connecting things back. So you can imagine that as we, draw lines from this right side back to your team, these are all lines of feedback that are being flowed to your business, right, or to your people. And they're not necessarily lines of feedback from a stakeholder in terms of what they want, but it's feedback from the system that they're building that allows them to iterate more quickly on, what are the goals to deliver back to the stakeholders. So just to call out kind of different layers of how like a CLI tool, like what I was talking about on the last slide, might allow you to integrate better with your, layers of your software. There's also additional tools like such as like Cortex code or Genie code, which is like Databricks or Snowflake's specific agentic engineering harness. And this is an example where your Claude or your team, working with Copilot or whatever, could be talking to a domain or platform specific agent to help it do its work, right? So in this case, like there might be some real benefits to using Cortex code in terms of like having Snowflake's context wrapped up in your messages. But it's also a huge risk, or not risk, it's just a lot of tokens potentially that could be consumed up in your main like context window. So if I'm working with Claude and I want to delegate to Cortex Code, like I want all the goodness that Cortex Code can give me about the Snowflake environment, but not all of that context bloat back into like my main orchestration session. And then just kind of breaking down how all of these different development layers have, specific data flows that can go back to your team, and how you can basically think of this, intermediate layer as like another layer of software, right? Of your development layer of like the tools that you build to help you build the tools. Um, so kind of going off of that, just quickly running back through like the feedback loops that we just talked about, talk to like how quality and these others can fit in. So if you're judging the humans in the system, you should be holding, AI to the same standard, if not a higher one, with coded checks as a part of these, different data sources you can integrate with. You can have tests and other ways to validate things in ways that you could probably never validate a human's work before. For value stream fit, working with your team to mold your plan to the business needs, shows how you can basically flow the value of like the stakeholder requirements down into your lower level requirements for your coding agents. And then measurement and ROI, you can build in or codify metrics into these custom CLI tools or custom layers of that development toolkit, to basically focus around like service level indicators. So you can track that directly in your application development process and say this feature or this tool will deliver this much value to my stakeholders based on what they're deciding to prioritize. And then finally, tool usage itself, like when AI joins the team, is it being treated like a peer, an intern, like a senior? Like how are you viewing your AI assistants in your workflows? Um, and this is kind of like a quick overview of if you were to do a time study of the human's job right now and working on a computer, break it down into these various different tools of, browsers and video calls and AI chats and all the domains of work that we're doing. These are all just data sources that should be in, at the grasp of your agents right now. And the AI output that you use in your everyday job is only going to be good as the input and context that you're providing to it. So, I guess just to kind of wrap it up, like the human MCP of you doing your job and you maneuvering through, all the different windows and apps to do your job now is making you the bottleneck of helping your AI be a part of your team. So the more that you can break down these barriers, the more that you can enable AI to work on the same workflows that you do, the faster you'll be able to realize the value of AI and integrate with other tools. And that's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today. We hope to see you next time and have a great rest of your day. Thanks all.